Today is Saturday, July 24th, and this is Tokyo Daily, the brand new Olympic show from the Toronto Star. I'm your host, Brendan Dunlop. Just like that, we're underway. Day one, and what a busy one. Talk about going 0 to 100 real quick. Day one of competition saw over 40 events take place. That's a busy calendar. I'm really glad my job is not in television programming and deciding the schedule, because doing the TV guide, that would be something. The first medal of these games goes to, the first gold medal, China. Yang Chang won the 10-meter women's air rifle event. Canadian cyclist Michael Woods was Canada's first medal hopeful, just missed out on a podium finish. The 34-year-old, better known in the cycling circles as Rusty Woods, was boxed out in a mad dash to the finish. He came in fifth. It was a grueling 234-kilometer race that took cyclists up Mount Fuji and down the Mikuni Pass. It ended in a 5-rider 100-kilometer sprint. So a nice finish that saw Ecuador's Richard Carapaz take the gold medal. Riders from Belgium and Slovenia took silver and bronze. In the sand, defending women's beach volleyball world champions Sarah Pavin and Melissa Humana Paredes began their Olympic medal quest with a straight sets win over the Dutch duo in 38-degree weather. It is so hot in Japan. Baseball and softball, the hottest sports in Japan, back on the Olympic schedule for the first time in a long time since Beijing. Canada's softball team has a great chance to medal here in Japan. Sarah Groenewegen and company throttled Australia 7-1 in what was as close to a must-win game as it gets, really. After losing to the top-ranked Americans 1-0 in their last outing, they needed to come out and get a result. They'll be very happy in the fashion they did that. Only the top two finishers advanced to the gold medal game in softball. And Christine Sinclair and company have made it very clear their intention is to change the color of their medal in Tokyo at these Olympic Games. They took the pitch for the second time so far at this tournament. Very happy to be joined by Laura Armstrong of the Toronto Star. Laura, a 2-1 win in the end. 3 points is all that Team Canada needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming into it, they just needed a result after sort of a poor start against Japan, a game that I think was very much winnable, but they sort of had a defensive collapse late and couldn't really score or create a lot of chances. I think that getting this result against Chile was very, very important. One of the things that, you know, as a soccer fan, you'll be happy to see today is the fact that Chile was a better team maybe than I expected. I mean, South America is a growing area of women's soccer. And certainly while Chile is ranked 37th in the world and they wouldn't necessarily be expected to beat a team like Canada, they certainly put in a match. And that's something that is great for sort of the broader world of women's football. But as we're talking about today, that 2-1 win for Canada was really important and likely gives them, you know, what they need to advance to the knockout stages, even though it's not official just yet.
But the parity of the women's game is good for the viewer. It's certainly good for the sport. And you're right about seeing the elevation of the South American game, that it's not just the powers from Brazil anymore, that Chile could kick it for almost 90 minutes and maybe we're unlucky to come out on the wrong end of things. But Janine Becky took over the game with 2 goals and got to make up for missing from the penalty spot. So Janine Becky making the most of her opportunities on the big Olympic stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that today was really a show of how important Janine Becky can be for this team. You look at that missed penalty opportunity, and there's going to be people who are saying Christine Sinclair should step up and take that penalty. It's the same conversation that we had back in 2019 when Janine Becky took the penalty at the Women's World Cup in the round of 16, missed, and then Canada got knocked out of that competition with a 1-0 loss to Sweden. So, I mean, certainly Janine Becky easily could have not stepped up today, and she did. And I think that it was really important. Certainly the stakes were a little bit lower today. It was early in the match. It's still the group stage. There was time to come back from it. But I think that you could have seen Janine Becky after she missed that penalty, which was not a bad penalty. I mean, you could see what she was trying to do, but she just was unlucky. I think that she easily could have sort of sunk back into herself and been non-existent for the rest of the game. Instead, she goes out, she scores 2 goals. And I think that, with Canada sort of difficulty in terms of creating chances, in terms of scoring goals, getting Janine Becky off to a good start was critical. This team is going to have to be pretty close to perfect, I think, to get to, a bronze medal game, a gold, a silver medal game. And so I certainly think that they need Janine Becky to do that. And I think that she showed sort of her medal today. And that's really important for this team.
I'm always interested to see when a penalty is awarded, if the player who draws the foul is the one who wants to step up and take it. Dwayne De Rosario and Danny Dicchio both told me that oftentimes they don't want to take it in that scenario. If they've drawn the foul, they're happy to not have been the penalty taker, depending on who happens to have the gloves on in front of them. That was Danny Dicchio's line. It's like, if it's a goalie that I really want to put it past, then I might just pick up the ball and step up to the spot. But Janine Beckie is a superstar in the women's game. Manchester City, a big player, and talking about the parity of the game and Chile, the competition level really being upped. You have these top female players now playing all across the world, just elevating the game across the board.
Absolutely. And I think that you've certainly seen how Janine Beckie in particular has just changed her game entirely since going to the English Premier League or the Women's Super League and going over to England. She said before this tournament, she said she cannot compare the player that she was in 2016 when she scored 3 goals at Rio. It wasn't too shabby, but she can't compare the player she was 5 years ago to the player she is now. And that's because of just the sheer sort of investment that's been made into the women's game. I mean, Manchester City is one of the premier clubs. They treat their women the same way they treat their men. And I think that that's incredibly important. And you see from players like Janine and Great Britain, who we'll see when Canada plays next, that it really is sort of that investment really is paying off.
And talk about the young players and the young stars. Jade Riviere, who's expected to have a big impact for Team Canada at these Olympics, got a start today alongside Julia Grosso. So Bev Priestman already turning to the youth.
Yeah, it's great to see. And I certainly think that in these tournaments, you need rotation. It's a really tight schedule, and you want to make sure that everybody plays. Some people get rest. I maybe would have rested Christine Sinclair after she was down a couple times in the first half. But that being said, if Christine Sinclair doesn't want to come off and Christine Sinclair doesn't come off, I totally understand that. But Jade Riviere and Julia Grosso both had really strong performances today. It's great to get them in, get their feet wet against a team like Chile, where they can sort of keep up with competition level without feeling entirely overwhelmed. Jade Riviere, we've seen a little bit more than Julia Grosso to date, and Jade Riviere has been very, very good on the flanks for Canada. But I certainly think that Julia Grosso, for me, was the one who stuck out. I think that she was probably Canada's best midfielder today, alongside Jessie Fleming and Desiree Scott, which I think is a big compliment to Julia Grosso, because those are 2 phenomenal players. But she was able to really link the defense and the offense, which is something that Canada certainly needs. And it'll be interesting to see now going forward what Bev Priestman is going to do and how those performances have sort of shaped where she goes further. I certainly think that we'll probably see a more senior team against Great Britain, but it's possible that one of these players certainly did enough today to earn a look later in the tournament.
Well, Caitlin Sheridan may have done enough to keep the gloves for Team Canada. Very few teams head to a big tournament with 2 number 1 quality goalkeepers. And Steph Labbe, who took a knock in the first match and had a head injury that saw her leave the match after stopping a penalty. It was Sheridan today, and it might be Sheridan for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, Sheridan, I wrote a story about her coming into this tournament, spoke to her club coaches, spoke to some of the members of the Canadian national team, and very many people think that Caitlin Sheridan has the ability to be one of the best goalkeepers in the world. It's incredible that she's even able to play in this tournament, given the fact that she tore her quadriceps just back in the She Believes Cup in February. But it's definitely really good problem for Bev Priestman to have. Certainly you don't want to see Stephanie Labbe go down with an injury, but she definitely has somebody who can step in pretty seamlessly and maybe really take that number 1 job. And, that also includes Erin McLeod. Erin McLeod is a fantastic goalkeeper. She's really done a great job to come back. She has a real veteran presence to her. So, the Canada doesn't just have the 2 number 1s. They also have a really solid sort of third option if they need it. Hopefully they won't, but it really is a great place to be.
Strength and depth and a luxury of options for Bev Priestman. Certainly a positive. England broke Canadian hearts, ended Canada's World Cup dreams in 2015. How does Canada stack up against this Great Britain side?
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game. I got a chance to sort of tune in a little bit to the Japan Great Britain game, and I genuinely thought that you were going to see Great Britain maybe walk all over Japan, because I thought that, as I said earlier, that when Japan faced Canada, it was a really winnable game for the Canadians. They did get the result. Team GB is going into the final match at the top of Group E, but I certainly think that maybe they didn't show me as much as I was expecting. I think that on paper, Canada and England are very close. I think that Canada and Team GB, maybe there's a little bit of a step apart, just because they were able to take, a couple of great players from other nations, but certainly it's very much a core of England players. These two teams know each other very well. I expect it to be a relatively cagey match. I think that you'd probably say that England has a little bit of a step up over the Canadians, but the Canadians have pulled off some results against England recently. So there's no reason why they couldn't play against Team GB. The interesting thing for me about this game is the fact that Rhian Wilkinson, who is a Canadian legend, is now on the coaching staff, and Bev Priestman certainly has a lot of experience, having coached in England. So I think it's going to be a really interesting battle with two teams who know each other very, very well.
The pre-match conversations would have been very interesting for sure, as will be many of the conversations in homes across the world watching skateboarding at the Olympics for the first time, which makes its debut on day 2, and that's your latest piece in the Toronto Star.
Yeah, so I don't know much about skateboarding. I didn't know much about skateboarding until I started writing this piece, but we have a piece online today on thestar.com and in today's paper about just what skateboarding is and what to look for. Meet the Canadian team, learn how this game is going to be judged, learn the language. There's an entire different language with skateboarding, which is really fun. And also understand the community that comes with skateboarding. There's more than 500,000 people in the country who skateboard. It has ridden waves of popularity over the last few decades. And I certainly think it's having a moment right now. And the great thing about skateboarding, I think, is that it's very accessible to a lot of people. You can go and you can pick up a board and you can be, part of this sport, art form, pastime. There's a big debate as to what to call it, but certainly I think it's going to be one of those events at the Olympics that brings a lot of joy, because the things that these people can do are just fantastic.
It's the Olympic sport that Tony Hawk built.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we'll call it. I'll go with that. And you may not have been involved in the culture. You may not have jumped into the half pipe and been at the skate park, but you played Tony Hawk's video games, didn't you?
I did play Tony Hawk's video games. I have been to a skate park recently for this project, and I was the person on the sidelines being like, are they okay? Are they going to get hurt? So I don't think skateboarding, is for me necessarily, but I do really enjoy watching it.
Well, I'm really glad you enjoy coming to chat with me as well, because we love having you on Tokyo Daily. Thanks for having me, Brendan. I couldn't imagine skateboarding in 40-degree weather or doing much of anything. Obviously, most of these competitors are used to training outside, but the heat will continue to be a major factor for all these outdoor events, as temperatures are going to be in the mid-30s for most of the Olympic Games, and it'll feel like 40 in a lot of venues and a lot of places. Canadians to watch on day 2? Well, how about Canadian tennis star Felix Auger-Aliassime of Montreal? He'll play Great Britain's Andy Murray. Talk about a tough opening test. Rosie DiManno wrote a great piece in the Toronto Star about Felix Auger-Aliassime, the 20-year-old, and what it was like trading in the glitz and glam of the ATP Pro Tour to live like a college student, which of course is something he's never experienced. On the women's side, 18-year-old Canadian Leila Annie Fernandez began her Olympic campaign with a win. Not bad for walking in the opening ceremony, marching with Team Canada, to then go out there and beat Diana Yastremska of Ukraine to advance to the second round. You can watch over 3,000 hours of Olympic coverage in this country. That's right, 3,000 hours available on CBC and on all of their digital platforms, so you can definitely take in all the games and take in this show, Tokyo Daily, on the Toronto Star's YouTube page every single afternoon during these Olympic Games, and subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Brendan Dunlop. I'll talk to you tomorrow.